because the jungle didn't care I was black. The Japanese didn't care, but my own captain, he did. They told us the radio was our lifeline. That heavy box of wires and static was supposed to connect us to the world beyond the jungle. It was supposed to be the reason we came home alive. But out here in the wet, unforgiving green of Burma, that radio felt more like a curse. It hummed, it hissed, and one night, it betrayed us. My name is David Carter. Back then, I was 21 years old, a private first class in the 5307th Composite Unit, what history books would later call Merrill's Marauders. Burma, 1944. The forgotten theater of a war everyone thought was about Europe and the Pacific beaches. We were ghosts fighting ghosts, chasing Japanese patrols through mountains and jungles that seemed determined to swallow us whole. I was the radio man. They gave me the call sign, Blackbird. Some of the guys said it was because of my voice, deep, steady, calm under pressure. Others meant something else by it. You learn quick when you're the only black man in a unit how words can wear two faces, one friendly, one sharpened to cut. I didn't have the luxury of calling it out. Not then, not if I wanted to make it home. The radio weighed nearly 50 pounds, strapped across my back like a coffin I carried willingly. My job was simple in theory. Keep us talking to command. Relay positions, call for supply drops, scream for artillery if things got hot. Simple. But simple doesn't mean easy when you're wading through mud up to your knees, leeches in your boots, and sweat stinging your eyes like acid. We moved in single file, always single file. The jungle demanded it. I remember the stink first, the rot of plants, the sweet sour reek of our own uniforms, never dry, never clean. We'd been moving for days, no real food except K-rations, no real sleep, just catnaps with your rifle across your chest. The men didn't complain much. Complaining took energy we didn't have. Still, I heard the whispers. Why's Carter on the radio? Why not give it to one of us? As if my skin made me less capable of holding a handset. As if the countless drills, the weeks of training, the bruised shoulders and torn calluses from carrying that damn pack meant nothing. I'd ignore them, but I heard them. Every word. Racism in war doesn't shout. It seeps like damp rot in your gear. You try to shake it off, but it lingers. Always. That night was the worst of it. We had pushed deep, too deep, past where our maps meant anything. Command wanted confirmation of enemy troop movements along a ridge overlooking the Irrawaddy River. We were stretched thin, running on fumes. Captain Harris gave me the order. Get us through, Carter, don't screw this up. He didn't mean it as a warning, but his tone told me what he really thought. So I set up. Kneeling in the mud, antenna angled toward the open canopy, I keyed the handset. Static roared like an angry ocean. My fingers worked from memory, adjusting dials, tapping out call signs, coaxing a voice from the noise. Finally, a response crackled through. Faint, broken, but there. I started relaying our coordinates, every syllable careful, my voice steady. That's when it happened. A burst of interference, loud, jagged, unnatural. Not static, not weather, something else. And then the jungle went quiet. Too quiet. I'll never forget that silence. Men stopped chewing, stopped shifting in the mud. Even the insects hushed like they knew something was coming. Hendricks, our scout, looked at me eyes wide. They're listening, he whispered, and I knew he was right. The Japanese had been tracking our frequency. My voice, my transmission had betrayed us. Within seconds, the night exploded. Mortar fire rained down, tearing trees apart, showering us in splinters and dirt. Bullets shredded the air, muzzle flashes sparking in the dark. Men screamed, stumbled, returned fire blind. That radio, the one thing that was supposed to save us, was the beacon that led death straight to our position. And I was the one carrying it. The jungle lit up like a lightning storm. Only the flashes were from rifles, and the thunder was steel tearing through the night. Men dove for cover, mud splashing, shouts overlapping the deafening roar. My fingers clenched tighter around the handset as if I could will the radio to undo what it had just done. But there was no undoing it. The beacon had already burned. "Carter, kill that damn thing!" someone yelled. I slammed the set into the dirt, yanking the antenna down. The pack felt heavier now, like it wanted to drag me straight into the ground. But destroying it wouldn't stop what was already coming. They knew where we were. Mortars kept thumping. Explosions lit the canopy above, showering us with burning leaves and branches. Jackson, one of the riflemen, screamed as shrapnel caught him in the leg, his cry swallowed by the chaos. Doc Vance was already moving low to the ground, dragging him behind what little cover a fallen tree could give. I tried to move, but Harris, the captain, grabbed my shoulder. His face was a mask of sweat and mud, eyes wild in the flickering muzzle flashes. "This is on you, Carter," he barked. "You gave us away." His words cut deeper than the mortar fragments ripping the earth. It didn't matter that any radio man in any squad could have been tracked. To him, to some of them, my mistake wasn't just human. It was inevitable. A black man screwing up, proving their whispers right. I wanted to scream back, to remind him I'd carried that coffin on my back across mountains, that I'd kept us alive through weeks of silence and static. But this wasn't the time. Not when death was sprinting toward us. Instead, I did my job. I crawled forward through the muck, headset crackling against my ear. Command had to know. I pressed the transmit key, forcing my voice steady even as the world fractured around me. "Base, this is Blackbird. We are under heavy fire. Enemy has our position. Grid 3-1. Repeat, 3-1. Request immediate support, over." Static answered, then a faint voice drowned in interference. "Blackbird, confirm grid. Say again." Another mortar landed so close the blast lifted me off the ground and slammed me onto my back. My ears rang. My vision blurred. For a second I thought I was done, but when the haze cleared I was still alive, and the radio was still hissing in my ear like a serpent that had already bitten. The men were firing into the dark, silhouettes dancing with every flash. Russo's bar barked in 3-round bursts, cutting down shadows as they rushed us. Chen, cool as ever, picked targets with his Garand, each shot a punctuation mark in the madness. Big Tom's voice bellowed somewhere behind me, keeping the team together through sheer force of will. And me? I kept talking into the void. "Base, this is Blackbird. We are compromised. Do you copy?" My throat was raw, my chest heaving. I didn't even know if anyone could hear me, or if the only ears tuned in were the ones firing mortars our way. Finally, an answer. "Blackbird, this is Guardian. Reinforcements en route. Hold your position. Hold your position." Easy words when you're safe behind a desk. Out here, it was a death sentence. Harris barked orders, voice slicing through the smoke. "Form a line. Don't let them break through." His eyes found me again, cold, accusing. "You better hope those reinforcements get here, Carter, or you'll be explaining this to their widows." His glare burned hotter than the jungle fire. My mistake, or what he called mine, was now stamped on every bullet flying at us. Every man who fell would carry my name on his blood. I pressed my face into the mud, whispering a prayer I hadn't said since I was a boy in Georgia. My mother used to tell me God sees everything, even the things people refuse to see. Out here under fire, I prayed he saw the truth, because the jungle didn't care I was black. The Japanese didn't care, but my own captain, he did. And that hurt worse than any wound the enemy could give me. The night dragged on, each second stretched thin by the weight of gunfire and guilt, and I knew this was only the beginning. The firing eased for a moment, like the jungle itself had to catch its breath. Smoke drifted low over the clearing, curling between tree trunks like ghosts. We crouched in the muck, lungs burning, ears ringing, hearts still thundering in our chests. Doc was working furiously over Jackson, pressing bandages to his shredded leg. Jackson's face was pale, teeth clenched against the pain. "Stay with me, Marine," Doc muttered, voice steady even though his hands shook. "You ain't leaving me here, not tonight." I adjusted the headset, static buzzing in my ear, waiting for Guardian to call back. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. Not from fear, at least not only fear, but from the weight of knowing every word I sent into that receiver could either save us or dig us deeper into hell. Harris stalked past me, eyes sharp as bayonets. He didn't say anything this time, but the glare was enough. To him, I wasn't Carter the radio man anymore. I was Carter the liability, Carter the mistake. Russo crouched beside me, bar still smoking, his voice pitched low. "Don't let him get in your head, brother. Radio ain't your fault. They'd have found us one way or another." I wanted to believe him, wanted to cling to that lifeline, but the way Harris stared at me, the way some of the others avoided my eyes, It was like they'd already written my name on the casualty report. The headset crackled. Guardian's voice broke through. Blackbird sitrep. Reinforcements ETA 15 mics. Can you hold? 15 minutes. Out here, that was a lifetime. I pressed the mic to my lips, trying to keep my voice from breaking. Guardian, we're under heavy fire. Ammo's low. One man critical. We'll hold. I had to say it. Whether it was true or not didn't matter. You don't tell command you can't hold. As if the enemy had heard the transmission, gunfire erupted again, louder than before. Shadows surged from the tree line, rifles spitting fire. Russo opened up with the bar, tracer rounds tearing through the dark. Chen's Garand cracked in rhythm. Big Tom roared curses as he fired, his massive frame like a wall between us and the enemy. I stayed low, calling updates into the mic. Guardian, they're pushing hard from the east. Mark Grid 317, request fire support if available. My words spilled out faster than my brain could process. Another mortar landed close, and the blast sent dirt and blood raining down. Hendricks, the farm boy, screamed and went limp, shrapnel buried deep in his chest. Doc dove for him, but even I could see from where I was. There was no saving him. His scream had ended mid-breath. Something inside me snapped. I slammed the mic down, my voice rising into a shout. God damn it, Guardian, where are those reinforcements? My throat burned, my chest heaved. For a moment, all I heard was my own ragged breathing and the crack of rifles. Then Harris was on me again, grabbing my collar, dragging me close so only I could hear. His whisper was venom. One dead already. That's on you, Carter. And when the rest of us go, that'll be on you too. I shoved him off, anger cutting through the fear. You think the bullets care what color I am, Captain? The words tore out before I could stop them. The men nearby froze for half a beat, but the fight gave us no time to dwell on it. Russo fired another burst, shouting, Less talk, more lead. Chen's calm voice followed. Movement left flank. The fight swallowed us again. But the words hung there, thick as the smoke, thicker than the mud. Harris didn't respond, but I saw the set of his jaw, the way he refused to look at me. 15 minutes. That was all we had to last. 15 minutes until help. Or until none of us were left to be helped. And with every bullet, every explosion, I couldn't shake the fear that the jungle, the enemy, even our own command would write the same line in the report. The radio man betrayed their position. The night had become a furnace of fire and noise. The Japanese were relentless, their movements disciplined, methodical. They weren't rushing blindly, they were tightening a noose. Every burst of fire pushed us closer to collapse. I clutched the handset, sweat dripping into my eyes, mud caking my face. Guardian, we can't hold much longer. Reinforcements need to move faster. My voice cracked. Static roared back, swallowing the words like the jungle itself refused to answer. Chen slid beside me, calm even now, rifle smoking. They're probing us, testing our line before they commit. Big push coming. His tone was flat, clinical, but his eyes betrayed the truth. He knew what was about to hit us. Harris crouched nearby, his helmet low over his brow, pistol flashing in the dark. He didn't look at me this time, but his voice carried venom even over the chaos. Carter, you get us out of this mess or you die with it. That's all there is. The others heard him. Russo's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Big Tom grunted as he heaved the radio antenna higher, giving me a better signal. Even in hell, he still believed in me. That cut deeper than Harris's scorn. I whispered into the mic again. Guardian, they're massing, east flank heavy. If you've got air, send it now. The reply came through broken, distorted, but clear enough. Blackbird, hold, reinforcements, 10 mics out. Air cover negative, too hot. 10 more minutes. My heart sank. 10 minutes in this place was 10 years. The enemy chose that moment to strike. From the tree line, shapes surged forward, bayonets glinting in muzzle flashes. The ground shook with the thunder of boots. Grenades arced through the air, glowing trails before they detonated among us. Russo's bar roared in defiance, cutting down the first wave. Chen fired calmly, each shot precise, each body falling where his sights found them. Big Tom ripped the radio from my back and set it on the ground, firing his rifle one-handed, voice booming curses that drowned out the chaos. And me? I kept screaming into the radio. Guardian, they're in our laps. Repeat, they're on top of us. Where the hell are you? Harris shot back to cover. slammed his back against a tree, and sneered at me between breaths. This is what happens when we let mistakes carry the radio. One slip, Carter. Just one, and we're all ghosts. The words were poison, but I couldn't answer him. Not while the enemy was so close I could hear their guttural shouts, see their faces in the flashes. A grenade landed not 5 feet away. I froze. Big Tom dove, scooping it in his massive hands, hurling it back into the trees. The blast lit him up like a lantern. He staggered, smoke rolling off his uniform, but he stayed on his feet. "Move, damn it!" he roared. "We ain't dead yet." That broke me loose. I dropped the mic long enough to fire my rifle into the dark, my finger a blur, my shoulder pounding from the recoil. The enemy fell back for a heartbeat, but it wouldn't last. Somewhere in the madness, Jackson, still half-conscious, called out weakly, his voice barely a whisper. "Mama." It was like a blade across my soul. We were all somebody's sons, somebody's brothers, and yet here we were, forgotten in a jungle, our lives hanging on static and silence. Then through the chaos a faint sound rose. Not gunfire, not mortars, the distant rhythmic chop of rotor blades. Reinforcements. But the enemy wasn't finished. They knew the clock was ticking, and they were determined to finish us before the cavalry arrived. And in that moment, as the jungle erupted in one final surge, I understood. Whether we survived or not, Harris would never forgive me. Not because of the radio, not because of the mistake, but because it was me, Carter, who carried the burden. The sound of rotor blades grew louder, chopping through the night air like a promise. For a heartbeat, hope surged in our chests. Reinforcements, extraction, a chance at survival. But the enemy heard it too, and they weren't about to let us live long enough to climb aboard those birds. A whistle cut through the jungle, sharp and commanding. Then they came, dozens of figures pouring from the trees, shouting in guttural tones, bayonets gleaming. It wasn't strategy anymore. It was a flood, a tide meant to overwhelm and drown us before salvation could land. "Hold the line!" Harris roared, his voice raw, pistol flashing as he emptied the last of his rounds. For all his venom toward me, he was still a Marine, still fighting like hell. Russo braced the bar on a root, the weapon hammering as tracers tore through the dark. Chensgaran snapped shot after shot, each round clean, deliberate. Big Tom bellowed like a wounded bull, his rifle thunderous in his massive hands. And me? I had the radio clutched to my chest, mic pressed so hard it bruised my lips. "Guardian, they're charging. We need fire support on our grid now," Static answered. Then, "Blackbird, danger close acknowledged. Artillery inbound, mark position." Danger close. That meant death riding both ways, too near and the shells would kill us as easily as the enemy. But we had no choice. I yanked a flare from my pack, ripped the cap, and shot it skyward. Red light hissed as it arced above the canopy. For an instant the jungle glowed hellish, the enemy's faces lit in grotesque detail as they surged toward us. Harris's eyes flicked to me, then to the sky. His mouth curled, not in gratitude, not even in relief, but in grim acceptance. "If we die, Carter, at least it won't be running." The first artillery shells screamed in. The jungle exploded, trees shattered, fire bloomed, bodies were torn apart in flashes of earth and smoke. The ground bucked under us, the air thick with dirt and blood. I dropped flat, hands over my helmet, heart hammering. The noise was beyond sound. It was force, pressure, fury. The enemy screamed, and then there was nothing but the roar of steel raining down. When the barrage ended, the jungle was unrecognizable. Trees lay in splintered heaps, the clearing churned into a cratered wasteland. Smoke and dust hung heavy, curling like fingers around the wreckage. I staggered to my feet, ears ringing, body shaking. Russo was alive, reloading with bloody hands. Chen leaned against a shattered trunk, his face streaked with grime, eyes cold but steady. Big Tom knelt in the dirt, the radio somehow still clutched to his back, his massive frame shielding it even from shrapnel. Doc crawled through the wreckage, his hands slick with blood as he searched for the living. He stopped at Hendrix's body, head bowed. Then he moved on because in war, grief waits until after. And Harris, he was there too. Helmet gone, uniform torn, but still standing. His eyes found me across the smoke, and for the first time there was no sneer, no venom. Just a look I couldn't read. Maybe respect, maybe resentment, maybe both. The rotors thundered overhead now, deafening, whipping the smoke into frenzied spirals. Shadows loomed above the tree line. Hueys, beautiful and terrible, their side doors bristling with guns. Fire poured from the sky, the choppers laying down a curtain of lead that shredded what was left of the enemy. "Move! Extraction!" Harris shouted, waving his arm. We stumbled, limped, carried the wounded. Jackson was barely conscious, strapped to Big Tom's shoulders like a child. Russo dragged Doc by the arm, both covered in blood. I clutched the radio, the weight of it heavier than ever. As we broke into the open, the Hueys dropped ropes. Crewmen shouted, reaching down with hands like salvation itself. One by one we climbed, bodies aching, lungs burning. The last to go was me, the radio slamming against my side as I was hauled aboard. The jungle receded beneath us, a smoking ruin, but the silence in my chest was louder than the roar of the rotors. Because even as we flew away, I knew the truth would follow me forever. The report would say the radio betrayed our position, but in my heart I knew it wasn't the machine. It was the man carrying it. We were running on fumes. Around me, medics rushed Jackson into surgery, Doc trailing after them with eyes hollow from failure and exhaustion. Russo cleaned his rifle with methodical motions, his face locked in a 1,000-yard stare. Big Tom hunched over, head in his hands, the giant finally crushed under a weight no one else could carry. Harris stood with the officers near the command tent, his voice low but sharp, cutting the air like steel. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. I knew what he was saying. That the radio man gave us away. That Carter was the weak link. That if not for me, Hendricks would still be breathing, Jackson would still have his leg, and we wouldn't be a broken platoon. A young lieutenant walked by, clipboard in hand, eyes lingering on me just long enough to shift away, as though my guilt was contagious. I'd seen that look before, back home, in bars where I wasn't welcome, in towns where my skin decided who I was before I spoke, and now here, in a jungle half a world away. The look hadn't changed. Russo broke the silence, his voice quiet, steady. "Don't let them hang this all on you, Carter. You kept that radio alive. You got us out." I wanted to believe him, but the truth was gnawing at me. Maybe it wasn't the radio's static. Maybe it wasn't the enemy's discipline. Maybe it really was me. My hands on the dial, my words into the mic, my flare that marked our hell. Later, Harris walked past me, his shadow long in the lantern light. He stopped just for a moment, his eyes cutting down at me. "You lived, Carter, but don't forget, men died because of you." He didn't spit it. Didn't even raise his voice. That almost made it worse. I stared back at him, jaw tight, fighting every urge to scream, to fight, to make him understand. But all I said was, "Yes, sir," because that's what you do when the deck's stacked. You take the weight, you carry it because no one else will. That night I sat with the radio beside me, listening to the static. It crackled like whispers, like the jungle itself hadn't let me go. And in that noise I thought of Hendricks's face when the shrapnel took him, of Jackson calling for his mama, of every name that wouldn't be written home because the radio man betrayed the position. I also thought of my own name, how back in the States they'd print it small, maybe not at all, how history books wouldn't mention Carter the radio man except maybe as a mistake, a footnote in someone else's war story. But I remember, and I will keep remembering, because the truth is simple. The radio didn't betray us, the jungle didn't betray us, command didn't betray us, it was war. And war doesn't care who carries the guilt or the scars or the color of your skin, but people do. And that's the weight I'll carry long after the jungle fades, long after the gunfire stops. The weight of knowing I lived when others didn't, and the weight of being the man they all swore betrayed the platoon. Weeks later, when the wounds had scabbed but not healed, they pulled me in front of a panel. 3 officers at a folding table, clipboards in hand, looking at me like I was already guilty. It wasn't a court-martial, not officially. They called it an after-action review, but I knew what it was. A trial with no defense. They asked me everything. Did I double-check the encryption? Did I verify the flare coordinates? Did I maintain proper radio silence before transmitting? Their questions came like bullets, one after another, designed not to find the truth but to confirm what they already believed. That Carter, the radio man, gave us away. I answered steady, calm, respectful. "Yes, sir." "No, sir. I followed protocol, sir." My voice never cracked. But inside, I was boiling. because I knew it wasn't my voice on that radio that betrayed us. It was the arrogance of command sending 6 men into a valley crawling with NVA without enough intel, without backup, without a chance in hell. But I didn't say it. I swallowed it down. Like every black man who'd ever worn the uniform before me, you bite your tongue because the truth doesn't keep you alive in the core. Obedience does. In the end, they cleared me of wrongdoing. Unavoidable compromise in a hostile environment, the report said. No fault assigned. But unofficially in the barracks it was different. Conversations stopped when I walked into the room. Men looked through me instead of at me. Some whispered, just loud enough, "That's him. That's the radio man who cost us Hendricks, who lost Jackson his leg." War writes its history in silence as much as blood, and silence is harder to fight than bullets. I carried it. I carried it through the rest of the tour, through firefights and patrols and the endless grind of the jungle. I carried it on the ship back home, where strangers clapped for uniforms but never looked at the man wearing one. I carried it into a country that demanded my service but didn't want me sitting at its lunch counters. That radio, those straps biting into my shoulders in the heat of the Shao, never really came off. Years later, I sit in a hall with other veterans, men whose hair has gone gray, whose eyes have seen too much. Some of them remember me, some don't. But I still hear it in the static of my dreams. The accusation whispered by the jungle itself. You betrayed your position. But here's the truth, the one I finally let myself say after decades of silence. I didn't betray my men. I carried their voices when no one else would. I called for fire, for dust off, for salvation, and I never let that signal go dark until the last man was safe. The radio didn't betray us. The enemy didn't betray us. War betrayed us. And when war's done, when the medals are tarnished and the reports filed away, all that's left are the ghosts. The ghosts of Hendricks, of Jackson's leg, of the looks that said I was less than the uniform I wore. But I tell this story now because ghosts don't scare me anymore. Silence does, and I won't be silent. So if you hear anything in these words, hear this. Don't let anyone else define your story. Don't let the whispers of blame drown out the truth of your sacrifice. Because sometimes survival itself is defiance, and sometimes carrying the weight when no one else will, that's the bravest thing a man can do. I've often thought about that night and about the static that filled my ears. Static that wasn't just noise, it was accusation, it was memory. It was the weight of being a black Marine carrying a burden the Corps itself refused to acknowledge. But with time, I've come to see it differently. That static, it's not just blame, it's also the voices of my brothers, the ones who didn't make it home. Hendricks, Jackson, others whose names are written on memorials but live louder in my heart. Their voices come through the noise, clearer now, telling me I didn't fail them, that surviving was its own form of victory. And maybe that's what matters most. Not the medals, not the reports, not the whispers in the barracks. What matters is carrying their stories forward. Refusing to let silence be the last word, because war tries to take everything. But if you keep the stories alive, if you speak them out loud, it never wins completely. So I speak, and I'll keep speaking. For them, for myself, for anyone who's ever carried a weight they didn't deserve. And if you've stayed with me through this story, I'll ask one thing of you. Don't let it vanish into the static. Keep it alive. Share it. And if you want to hear more stories like this from the shadows of history where the truth still lingers, subscribe, leave a comment, let your voice join mine, because silence is the enemy, and together we can make sure it never wins.